Well, apparently, you can't chase ghosts.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available wherever you get it. Listen, watch, YouTube. Thank you for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Where we get started. All right, what is this UCLA team going to do? What are they going to do? Is it Garbers? Is it Martin? Is it a game time decision? All the back and forth, right? All the back and forth. The quote from James Franklin of the week: "You can't chase ghosts," said the Penn State head coach when preparing for the UCLA quarterback situation. And Deshaun Foster's already been a little bit more quiet. He's been a little mum about his injury status, regardless of who it is. He's been waiting till game day, literal game day, to when the Big Ten injury media report comes out to tell folks what's going to happen. Now, what is UCLA going to do? Most importantly, yes, there's a big difference in my mind versus what Justyn Martin can bring, a guy who's got 5 career passes, versus Ethan Garbers, who has played in games in 4 separate seasons and attempted passes against some of the nation's best, and has a lot more moxie, I think, in the pocket with what seems to be a crumbling offensive line. Which starts us with our first key. This is a Penn State team that was dominant against Illinois last week, right? They were elites in their game against Illinois. While UCLA, they've been struggling to generate a good pass protection of any sort, all right? They've been struggling to keep the quarterback protected, which is why Garbers, these last 2 seasons, has been a little problematic, right? It's been, to keep him on the field, it's been a big chore for UCLA. Last week, Penn State, 7 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. That is a season high for the Nittany Lions. So if you're ever a team that is struggling to protect the quarterback, struggling in the run game, because Penn State's a top 10 team when it comes to yards per game against the run, and one of the better teams in yards per carry defensively. UCLA facing a Penn State team, and all the jokes coming out about Abdul Carter with his 2 sacks, coming in with 4 tackles for loss, the multiple of options that Penn State has to go and chase the quarterback. Why could this game be ugly? It's if UCLA doesn't protect whoever's starting. Now, yes, it could be a big difference as to who is. Martin's, I think, a little more athletic than Garbers. He's certainly faster and more than an injured Garbers would be. But there's just something about a tough, super senior quarterback that gives me a little more confidence in UCLA's chances in this game, as slim as they may be, as big of a spread as it may be, to cover. We'll get more on that in a moment. You've got to protect the quarterback. Doesn't matter exactly who it is. If you don't keep Martin, if you don't keep whoever, if you don't keep Garbers upright, then we're gonna struggle, right? And here's the thing, as we're going back and forth about the quarterback, Ethan Garbers wasn't supposed to play in the bowl game, and he came out and led the team to a victory with 150 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, and was the LA Bowl MVP when they beat Boise State. All right, so this is a guy who has already played through injury, wasn't supposed to play, and still led his team to victory in his career, in UCLA's most recent successful season. That's why it's so unique and odd to try and pick it out, right? Is it this guy who's been around for so long, trying to adjust to a new system? Now, would this been a better situation for Martin if he's in the Chip Kelly offense, an offense he had learned a couple of years, or versus one where he's trying to pick it up, where most of the offense has struggled to pick up the offense, to understand what's going on around him? Okay? So I think the big thing for UCLA here in this game, obviously you got to protect the quarterback. Penn State's coming off their best game where they just manhandled the Fighting Illini on the line. And that didn't bode well for UCLA coming in. 2, how many early completions can they get to have their feet wet for Ethan Garbers or for Justyn Martin? In my mind, when I've recorded this episode, there has not been a decision yet. So when I'm recording this, there has been nothing that has been said either way. We're still undecided. We still have no idea. So if you're watching this, you're like, he doesn't know anything. When I've recorded this, there has been nothing, right? That's why you saw that in the same thing with the crossover with Locked On Nittany Lions with Zach Seko. We're still a little up in the air as to what's going on at this moment. But you can't chase ghosts. Well, maybe Ethan Garbers can be a ghost. It's the stripe out game at Penn State. It's the early game, another cross-country travel. You've gone to Louisiana. You've gone to Hawaii. They go to Pennsylvania. There's a lot of travel involved. And then UCLA goes to New Jersey later in the year. A lot involved for this UCLA team right now. So I hope the Bruins can keep the quarterback upright. And then easy completions early. Easy completions. I want UCLA to score a touchdown on the opening drive. When they scored a touchdown on their opening drive, that generally set the tone for a strong. When they score a touchdown on the opening drive of a half, right? For UCLA, they need to score a touchdown in the first half. But when they scored a touchdown on the opening drive in the second half against Hawaii, great second half offensively. Now they scored a lot of field goals after that, but it set the tone for scoring nearly every drive. Then when you played Indiana and they dropped the ball, miserable performance. Against LSU, they went and scored a touchdown after LSU scored a touchdown, and they were competitive to the fourth quarter. Against the likes of the Oregon Ducks, they maybe could have gone for it on fourth down. They kicked a field goal, and they kept it, the score close until late in the fourth quarter, but they scored. Now you look at this Penn State team, who is supposed to win this game by at least 4 scores, maybe 4 touchdowns. UCLA needs to score a touchdown on their opening drive, and if they do that, generally they will keep it respectable and be a lot more competitive in this game than many people think, just by simply scoring a touchdown on the opening drive. Forget what the defense has been doing the opening drive. If the offense does that, I think UCLA should, if they win the toss, receive and go down and try and score. All right? Because this deferring nonsense and being down 7-0 every game isn't working. Go out, score some points, and shock the world. All right? That's where I'm at. Now let's go to more keys to the game. In the next segment, we're talking more defensive-heavy keys here on Locked On UCLA. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season big with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's on FanDuel.com. To place your first $5 bet, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. One of the lines to look at right now, unfortunately, the UCLA line versus Penn State, that's plus 27.5 for UCLA. And when I'm recording this, you might want to get a clear thought about what the quarterback situation is. And depending on who it is, you might go UCLA plus 27.5, or you might think Drew Aller and Penn State might be able to cover a basic 4-touchdown spread. That's what this is, a 4-touchdown spread. That's a huge one. It's tough considering the quarterback situation. Could they cover? I want UCLA to cover. I think they can. But I want to know a little bit more, which is why you should go check out FanDuel. And you place that $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets for much better options later in the week. All right, here we go. Second segment for the Locked On UCLA podcast. You know where I'm starting this. You know exactly where I'm starting with this, right? For UCLA football. Don't, on the defensive side of the ball, give up a dang touchdown on the opening drive. UCLA, 4 straight weeks, has allowed a touchdown on the opening drive. Every single time for the opponent. Hawaii, a little different because they forced a 3 and out, gave up a punt still the opening drive. Against the likes of Indiana, they went down, completed, and converted 3 third downs for a score. Then you had LSU march right down the field. Oregon did the same thing. then the Bruins make adjustments. They handle it, and maybe they'll have Sharif say, maybe they'll have the more options. Maybe the secondary can make a play. Maybe Drew Aller does something dumb. I don't know. But beyond like what UCLA needs to do, they need to first find out if they can keep a team scoreless on their opening drive. That is yet to happen this season. Yet to happen. It has not happened at all. So if they could do that against Penn State, I'd love to see it. I would love to see it for UCLA. Would love to. Okay? Would absolutely love to. Now, if the Bruins don't, it will be ugly. All right? If they can't keep Penn State off the board on the opening possession, this could be an ugly game. Now, of course, in the last segment, I said UCLA, take the opening kickoff, go down and score. Don't defer because the defense hasn't stopped anybody on the opening drive, and they're down every single time, and the offense already is behind the eight ball, having to probably go for it on fourth down at midfield. You want to save those decisions for later, right? Not often are you a coach in Deshaun Foster where you have to make so many weird fourth down decisions early in games where normally you'd punt it, but because you're so behind everything and you're trying to score the first big win and prove the program's moving forward, every fourth down decision is questioned. Well, it would help if Akaka Malloy, who's very emotional in talking to the media this week at practice, he understands it's not going well so far. But they had so many talented players last year that they lost to the portal or to the NFL that he just doesn't have. And remember, he brought Leatu Latu to UCLA. Let's not forget, Akaka Malloy has that semi-defensive coordinator experience because he's a co-defensive coordinator at Washington and brought Latu, the best defensive player UCLA's had in a while. And Danton Lynn stole the two best DBs the Bruins have. A bit of a banged-up linebacker room, limited, talent on the D-line. Can UCLA stop giving so much cushion to these receivers? That would be key number 2. Can UCLA play a tighter man coverage, force Drew Aller to beat them deep? Because, having seen Drew Aller a few times, I just haven't been a believer in what he can do. It's like, is he good? Is he better than Altmaier, who he just played against Illinois? Is he legit? Or is there a reason why Michigan last year, when they're really good, could go to Penn State and just choke out the clock and Penn State couldn't score, right? It's always, who's this quarterback at Penn State that's overrated and whatever. Now, could you debate that Aller's probably better than Ethan Garbers? Yada, yada, yada. Cool. But what UCLA needs to do is not give these 5-yard cushions. Generate pressure, maybe throw a blitz or two, and test Drew Aller, right? I know Nittany Lion fans will be like, all right, come, you're going to blah, 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 blah. You're going to eat your words. Well, test the man. Test the man with some tight man coverage. Blitz a little bit more. Get crazy at Kaika Malloy. If you're an underdog by 4 touchdowns, who cares if they go over the top? Get funky with it. And this isn't Oregon, who's going with Dylan Gabriel, completing literally 80% of his passes. It's a little different. Penn State prides itself in the run game. UCLA is technically at this moment a top 35 run defense. When it comes to yards per game, 3.5 yards per carry, not terrible, but Oregon was the first team that prided themselves in running the football, and they chewed up over 150 yards, close to it. And Penn State could do something similar where, hey, if we just dominate the line of scrimmage, then we don't really need to worry about it, and then a play-action pass will turn into a big play. Or a couple of passes where UCLA starts giving cushion, and they get burned deep. All right? So I think the big thing for UCLA is, I want one, defensively, do not give a touchdown on the opening drive. Even if they end up giving up 42 points, don't give up a touchdown on the opening drive. That will completely change my letter grade for their reaction and what I think for their grades in this game. 2, play much tighter coverage in the secondary. Don't give them easy 5-yard completions. Make a play. Defend some passes. Get another pick. That pick 6 and Brian Addison was baller. Yes, maybe the receiver slipped. We got to be in position to make the plays in order for things to happen. Good things to happen, right? Is it better to be lucky than good? Well, for UCLA to pull off an upset this huge, they're going to need to be lucky. Lucky in a lot of ways. Some calls, some plays, some fluky nonsense. That's how you score a big upset on the road. or at least keep it much closer and put some fear into the eyes of the Nittany Lion fans. Okay. Then 2 or 3, I should say, is this a legitimate run defense? Last year, UCLA is one of the best rushing defenses in the country. I'm not sure that's what they have this year, but they have defended the run decently. They haven't been tested to where I want to go out and say, yeah, they're going to stop this run. Top 35 running defense is going to go hold down this Nittany Lion rushing attack. No, this is a prove-it game. This is, do they give up another 150 yards rushing and that yards per carry number grows? Or can they go make some positive plays in what would be negative plays for Penn State and keep them in the game, which they've been able to do? And no, I don't mean by negative plays when they're down 3 scores and trying to claw their way back. I mean, when the game's still 0-0, when it's a one-score game, they make multiple plays, tackles for loss, get a couple of sacks. Prove they can go pound for pound with the Penn State offensive line. Pound for pound with a Penn State team that, they're one of the running backs, one of their top running backs. Might be questionable for this game. Now, they still got another top dog. All right, they got a quarterback who the Nittany Lion fans do believe in and will defend in and defend top to bottom. And UCLA hasn't generated anything on the D-line. Where UCLA has faltered this year is the O-line and the D-line. And whereas Penn State generally they're built in digging in the trenches. And that is where UCLA might falter and will falter in this game. That is their clear weakness. And that is what everyone has said about Big Ten. They have nothing in the trenches. Well, I think they've tried to address it as much as they could in recruiting. They just won't see it for a couple years down the line when those guys are D1 ready. They're not ready now, and they're still in high school with some of these commits that UCLA is trying to get. Build and bulk up. And at the moment, the portal guys have been doing their best to maintain things, but right now, UCLA doesn't have the depth on the O-line, and they just don't have the size at this moment to hang with the beastly D-lines and the big O-linemen that Penn State's going to boast. Okay, and that's what UCLA needs to succeed and potentially pull off upsets. UCLA's got to control the line of scrimmage. One of them, or at least be competitive, because they're not going to control the line of scrimmage against Penn State. I don't believe so. And if they do, they did some funky things that really fooled them, right? I want UCLA to do something weird, right? As embarrassing as that Arizona State loss was last year, swing and gate, do something. Do something funky, whether it's Eric Bieniemy going swing and gate, maybe the equivalent of that defensively for a Kakamaloy. Do something weird and creative and see if it throws off the Nittany Lions and Drew Aller for a minute and James Franklin. Because you can't chase ghosts, all right? You're already a big underdog. Let's have some fun. How do I think this game's going to go? I've been on record saying if the Bruins do get a full game from Garbers, they will cover. If they don't, it will be ugly. Unless Morton really surprises us and shows us he's the quarterback of the future. All right? And we saw last year with the quarterback drama how it could happen. This one's a little different. With Garbers hurt, that's a problem. And with a young quarterback or a younger quarterback in terms of experience and a poor offensive line in front of him, for me, it doesn't bode well with a complicated offense against a very tough defense in front of him if Martin is to start and play a whole game. All right? So it's tough to think how this goes. I think this could be the game where UCLA does get that first defensive stop on the opening drive, doesn't allow a touchdown, hopefully not allow any points. Penn State, huge, huge, huge favorites. And I think UCLA could hang a little bit if QB1 plays. And remember, I'm recording this before that announcement was made. So bear with me. Next, we'll talk about Mick Cronin, the GM, and the Big Ten Media Day. Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. All right, final segment here in the Locked On. Oh, excuse me, pause 1 second. We can't forget, because we're talking game time too. We're getting to that final segment. And you want to go to those games, right? You want to get there. You're talking game time. They've got game time picks and make getting tickets easy for your favorite events, right? Maybe you're going to the postseason, concerts, music, everything, right? And before we get to that last segment, you're like, I want to get to this game, right? Maybe it's that bucket list to go to Penn State and see a game at Beaver Stadium. Well, Game Time's got your tickets. You can have seat views. So if you want to know where you're sitting in these big football cathedrals, you can see a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And you can toggle in the all-in pricing to show the feature and the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. All you got to do is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Now we're on to the final segment of the Locked On UCLA podcast. Zach with you guys. What are we talking about? Let's talk about Big Ten Media Day. What was the big thing Mick Cronin said, right? The big position, especially in college football, the GM position, right? Normally the GM, that's a pro thing. I got a general manager. In any professional sports team, the general manager or equivalent is the biggest thing. Of course, unless you're the Dodgers, Freeman's the president of baseball operations, and you got Brandon Gomes. But generally, the GM speaks for a lot of things, speaks for just about everything about player personnel. And that's what it is for, football, trying to maintain the NILs and the NIL deals and who's there, who's coming, who's not. The GM is important. That's what Deshaun Foster has tabbed, right? A GM. College football players. What did Kalen DeBoer do at Alabama? The GM. He paid his dude so he wouldn't go elsewhere. He wouldn't go to USC. And Mick Cronin's like, you're looking at the GM, baby. Now let me tell you, managing 15 players is a lot easier than 120 or 85 at the moment, when then they'll expand to scholarships all the way to over 100 to roster limits. Okay? So for Mick Cronin, a little easier to manage. All right, I know what this guy's getting. I know what this guy's getting. I'm the GM. He could talk. He's like, I think you're a baller. Let's get you something. Mick Cronin gets it. And I guess that's why if you see some UCLA fans pointing or Big Ten fans pointing, oh, that's the coach that's prepared versus not. Well, Mick Cronin's been a loquacious fella. He loves to talk. He's like, I'm at UCLA. We're trying to get a 12th banner. When he's sitting there with other coaches next to him, yeah, I'm a badass. I'm going to kick some butt. I'm trying to go kick some butt and win a title. Who cares about a Big Ten regular season? Let's go do it. That's what he's talking about. And he says, I'm the GM. And that's the mantra that Chip Kelly never adopted on the football side of things, which is a lot tougher to do in football-wise. That's the thing Deshaun Foster is embracing. It just hasn't translated into success with this year's players and this year's staff on the field, which makes the future a little murky. They're getting guys, they're getting commits. They got 326 commits. They have some talent coming in the 25 class, which was all but neglected by Kelly. And now got Mick Cronin, who's like, our NIL sucks. Our NIL sucks. And then it came through, and now UCLA has a talented team. All right? A talented team. Extremely talented. Through the roof. Depth galore. All around the board. Ridiculous. Unstoppable, I think this team will be. They're going to go travel. They've got guys 10 deep, 11 deep, 12 deep, 15 deep maybe that could play on this year's team, 14 deep. That's how deep this team is because Mick Cronin's like, let's go. And then there's the talk with Kobe Johnson. He's not alongside Dylan Andrews, who went to Media Day, but a lot of the idea was, hey, Kobe, what's it like going from USC to UCLA? You don't go from your bitter rival across town to UCLA, right? That's not something you do as the captain in the USC locker room. And he talks about it. Mick Cronin said, hey, man, when Kobe Johnson was picking pockets and reading my plays and getting steals, and then he's like, hey, I got to go gotta get him. And the door opened when Kobe came in the portal when Andy Enfield left for SMU. Musselman was coming to town, and then it was just a match made in basketball heaven. A defensive-minded head coach to bring in a defensive-minded, clear-cut captain-like model for UCLA and Kobe Johnson. Now, it's only 1 year of him, unfortunately, and it's going to be tough for a captain for your rival across town to come in and make an immediate impact. But as Mick Cronin's already said, that's why Stefanovic has been that vocal leader. Act like you've been here. He's going to tell these guys, act like you've been here. Program building is dead. I believe that's what Mick Cronin said. There's no program building. That doesn't happen. It happens with 1 to 2 guys, but it's not like 10 guys program build. It's you need a foundational rock for guys who are going to stay. And then you need what you need is for the other portal guys to buy in. And if they do, then UCLA is going to be really good, right? You saw some of the unofficial preseason Big Ten media poll. UCLA picked to finish third of the top 4 teams. UCLA goes on the road to all those teams, but has the easiest home schedule, I think, between USC, Washington, Oregon. That's debatable, but I do think you could have played Purdue and all those teams home, but you got to go on the road to a lot of those schools on the road. So I'm excited for what the Bruins to have to bring on the table. So get excited for this basketball season. Cronin's talking big. I'm thinking third weekend of the NCAA tournament. That means Final Four good for both the men and the women. This will be a huge basketball season. A lot of big games, not a lot of non-conference home games, but big non-conference games. December will be entertaining. And then January to March will be weird. It'll be entertaining. Games will be on every day of the week, but we'll be right here to cover it. So like, comment, subscribe, download, and thanks for your support. Stay right here with Locked On UCLA. We will have a reaction right after the Penn State game. I'll be right here. Reaction right after the game. Be right there. We'll be up there early in the morning. Big noon kickoff. Maybe enjoying some college game day with Marshawn Lynch with the Calamoni on the other side. But we'll be right here. So like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.